Hello, and welcome to Authors Amplified. I'm your host, Stephanie O'Neill. My show is a part of the Amplified Podcast Network, where ideas echo and voices resonate. With over 20 years at Christian Television Network, I've had the privilege of meeting countless talented and spiritual individuals, and it's too inspiring not to share. I'm just a girl who loves Jesus wholeheartedly. I'm eager to learn and grow, and I'd like you to join me on this journey. In each episode, I'll be speaking with Christian authors who will share their stories and insights about the books they've written. I'm thrilled to have you with us, so let's get started. Welcome to another Authors Amplified. I am so excited to share this author and his book with you today. It's such a needed topic. I pray you all will open your ears and open your hearts. Today I have Chaplain Ted Stackpole, and his book is I Am Safe Now. It's about adoption, and he knows all about adoption, foster care. So I'm so happy to have you. Thank you for your time. I truly appreciate it.
Oh, it's good to be here. Appreciate the invitation today.
So happy to. This book just means so much, I believe. Can we just start a little bit about your background? Can you just tell us a little bit about you and your wife and your family?
Yeah, so my wife and we live in a little town called Palatka, Florida, and we moved here back in let's see, it would have been 1996, and we were doing ministry here. So we were brought here to do youth ministry, and then later on in our tenure, we started pastoring the church. So we were lead pastors at the church for 15 years. When we started off, we got married in 93. We decided to start a family. I wanted one child, and Angie wanted four. So we compromised like every young couple does, and we had five children. Yeah. And then little did we know that our family would start again. And in 2013, we started fostering children while we were pastoring the church. So we were lead pastors 15 years. And during that time, we started fostering children along with other families in the church. And so from 2013 to 2019, we had a couple dozen children come through our home. Six of those children, their parents' rights were either terminated by the courts or they were surrendered. So we were able to give them a forever family through the gift of adoption. So at this present time, we have 11 children, eight still at home between the age of 7 and 18 years of age.
There's never a quiet moment, is there?
No. Yeah, because there's always somebody at the house.
Right.
My wife homeschools one. We've got
Oh, wow.
two that are somewhat independent because that 16, 18-year-old both have graduated with their AS degree and through the college and high school already. And then we've got one in middle school, public school, and three in a charter school. So,
Wow.
yeah.
That's amazing. So what led you to write this book? The book is called I
Well,
Am Safe Now, right? And you can get it for girl or boy.
that's right. And
Yeah.
so it is a children's illustrated book. And, through our adoption experience, we know that children continue to feel like they're in foster care, even after they've been adopted. They feel like, and this was based on a story that I had heard from a friend of ours who had adopted some children, and they were actually moving. And one of the children they had adopted thought that he was going to another home, to another
Mhm.
family. And so I picked up on the understanding of what that was like. And so we wrote this book specifically initially for children who had been adopted. And it takes you through a similar storyline where this child comes into a home and eventually is adopted. And then the family is preparing to go on vacation. And the child sees the luggage by the back door and so thinks that he or she is moving to a new home. And then the foster mom sits down and explains that that child will never be leaving. And then at the end, it presents kind of a similar, an interesting gospel explanation how we're now part of God's family, and that Jesus really is our big brother, and he's our brother now too. And then an opportunity at the end for the child to invite Christ to be a part of their
Mhm.
life and to
Mhm.
become adopted into the family of God. So.
I love that so much. So were there surprises on how the book was being used, or have you heard any stories?
Yes. So initially, we were going to provide this book for families who had adopted children. So, like I said, it's the same storyline. One is a boy and one is a girl. So, you're trying to figure out audience. I certainly didn't want a boy who'd been adopted to have a girl book and vice versa.
Mhm.
So, it's the same storyline. So, that was our thought. So, we began to just bless families who had adopted children. We mailed them copies. We didn't really create this for the idea of earning a living off of it. We just wanted
Mhm.
it to be a tool, and we were trying to
Mhm.
develop a tool for families to use. The interesting part is that we are self-funded, so people support us privately as missionaries into the foster and adoption community. And so we decided to go ahead and mail a copy of this book to all of our partners, kind of as a thank you for partnering with us, being on mission with us. And then I started getting responses back from them. I didn't, my purpose was for adopted children, but what I noticed was grandparents were reading the books to their grandkids, and they would send me pictures and saying, how much it impacted their grandchild's life, reading the story about this child had been adopted. Then we brought one into our children's public school and said, "Hey, you guys interested in having this in your library?" So they put it in their library, and then kids were checking it out. My own kids were checking it out. I'm like, I have a whole case of them. Why are you checking this out from the library? I read it to 1,000 times, but they'd bring it home and they wanted me to read it to them again. And so, what I began to realize was that the book was creating awareness more than even what I was expecting it to do, and that was to just to help a child understand that what permanency looks like, that the home they're in is their forever home through the story of a child here. And so, we just made a quick discovery that this had a much bigger audience than I had intended it to have, and just begin to look at, well, where would this go? Like, what would be our next step with the book? And so we discovered that we really needed to write a prequel to this.
Mm. So this would also be a great book for parents to read to their children, not being adopted, but maybe who have friends that were adopted,
Abs-
to help them
Absolutely.
understand also. And I know a lot of
Yes.
grandparents adopt their children, their grandchildren, like you were saying. So there's definitely different, many different realms of help here. Was
Yeah,
that
absolutely.
was that your thought process, or were you just
Yes. Yeah, and
initially
that was,
just,
oh yeah, no, I was shocked by that. I
yeah?
wasn't really expecting that. I really only developed the book as a tool for adopted children, and we specifically were saying like between age of maybe 5 and 12 years
Mhm.
old. So when we do our classes for foster parents, that's what I was promoting. Hey, if you've adopted children this last year and they're between these ages, we'd love to send you a book here. And so I was mailing his books out and getting feedback from these parents, and they were so appreciative of the books. And when we started giving the books to our partners, our financial partners, as a gift, that's when all of a sudden we discovered, like, whoa, like this actually is taking on a life of its own and has a much bigger purpose than what we had intended it to be developed for.
Right. Can we go on a little bunny trail here? Because
Yeah.
I was surprised at the statistics. I don't know if people realize how many children are in foster care and how
Mhm.
many children get adopted every year. So the numbers I found, 391,000 children in foster care every year.
Mhm.
That's huge. And then 50,000 adopted from foster care. I
Wow.
mean, I don't know if people even realize the dilemma that we have here when it
Yeah,
comes.
yeah. So the real part of that dilemma is that there's 20,000 children that age out of foster care without a forever family every year. And a very high percentage of them within 12 to 24 months are incarcerated, become
Mm,
pregnant, and homeless. And so, that impacts our society, and those children become cyclitic, meaning that they perpetuate a cycle. Many of them have children who end up in foster care, and then the cycle perpetuates after that.
Right. How can people, this is not even what we were going to be talking about, but since you're the missionary for all of this, I would love to, how can people help that don't foster, that maybe can't adopt, but how can somebody help?
Yeah, so one of the big issues in foster care, because it's very difficult if you've done it, and lots of people are raising other people's children. Maybe you're remarried and children came into your family. Like you understand that it's difficult to raise someone else's child, or there's 2.3 million grandparents raising grandkids today in the US. I mean, that's a huge task on that. So we kind of can get a grasp sometimes of what it's like. So when in licensed foster care, you have families who are raising not just other people's children, but with the purpose of trying to return those children back to their families. And so it can be very difficult. And so we see a statistic here about 35% of those children are moving homes 2 to 3 times a year.
Mm,
And that number can change to help provide greater stability for those children if those families had more interaction. So many times those families become isolated really quick. They can't attend their churches anymore because their churches don't know how to manage maybe the behaviors because of the
mhm,
trauma that the kids are in there. So those families become isolated. And then you see a huge statistics where marriages are now being impacted because of the children that are coming into the home. There's a lot of things, but there's a real answer to all of that. And the real answer is pretty simple, and that is healthy relationships around those families and around those children help to stabilize those families. Like, what can we do to help serve these families? And in our area of the world, we call that wraparound. Like, what can we do to help this family that's on mission? So we're not fostering, but I could help provide them a meal.
mhm,
I could help maybe transport that child to a sporting activity, or maybe they need help with homework in the afternoon because many of these children are far behind in their education. They can't read or write. And but there's things that we can done. So to really help bring health to that child while the birth family is trying to get, their lives put back together, stabilizing those children there, and helping the caregivers, the foster family, be a healthy place for those children to be in. And so, I mean, that's just one area. So I think it's an observation. And I know that I feel like I owe a lot of families an apology after pastoring, but especially like grandparents. So I think the first thing, if I was going to recommend, is I would say, look around the church and say, who in our church are raising other people's children? Are there
mm,
grandparents here? Are there foster parents here? Are there single moms here that maybe are struggling? And this could be a way of even preventing a child from going into foster care. Like that single mom maybe needs some additional help. So looking around at what children in our congregation and families that are caring for them are maybe at risk in some way, and then what could I do something small? And I know this is not what the conversation is about, but I always recommend three things that are really predictable that you can do. One is do something inspirational for that family every month. Call them up and pray for them.
mhm,
Send them a note in the mail, thinking of you today. Like find something that you can do that every month you say, for the next 12 months, I'm going to do once a month, something inspirational, do something practical for that family. So that might be, hey, I'm going to send them a gift card for pizza for Friday night, or I'm going to buy diapers for them because they have a baby, but something practical. And then do something one time that month that's relational for that family. That's not just a transactional thing like a card or buying them something, but something relational. And that might be, offering respite for 4 to 48 hours. Like, could I watch your kids Friday night so you guys go out on a date?
mhm,
But trying to create something relational there. Can I help your kids do homework? Are they struggling with that? If you got a whole herd of kids coming home in the afternoon and they're all behind educationally, having more hands at the table. And we've had people help us with that, where we dropped the kids by the church. So a couple of our kids could get help with homework while we took other kids somewhere else, with us.
mhm.
But, so just inspirational, practical, relational. You commit to that family for 12 months. It'll make a huge difference in that family's life, and they will never forget it. And those kids will never forget whatever they call you,
Mhm.
Aunt Julie, Uncle Tom, but whoever you are to them at that point, they'll never forget that person, when they go back home, that every month, did something to help me in my life.
Right. That is, I know that's not what we were supposed to be talking about, but so, people who aren't involved in foster care, they're not involved. clue. I would not have no clue how to help. So that is like so helpful to just have practical ideas to get out of yourself, right? And be observant to those around you, and then just be the hands of God, basically, right? The hands of
Yeah,
Jesus. Yeah,
they're going to see you at church. They're going to get to know you. I mean, it's you're building the relationship is so powerful, and
yeah,
we don't know at the end of the day what that relationship will mean to that family and to those children.
right, right. So what were some of the considerations and concerns that you had when you were writing the book?
Just the instability that children have a hard time breaking the cycle of knowing, especially if they've been in a dozen placements in their life. Now they're being adopted, but they're programmed to know that nothing's permanent. Their birth family wasn't permanent. You know, it was unstable. Maybe they've been in multiple foster families now. Or a lot of times what happens too is they'll go from their birth family to their grandparents, and
Mm,
then their grandparents can't take care of them, and then they end up in foster care. So there's a continual story and so part of their story in life, what they believe is true, is that not there's no permanent family for me. And so they're watching for signs of when it's time to leave. And so maybe they don't want to attach, maybe they don't want to, and so we want to try to give them a story that helps them understand. Maybe they can relate, and maybe it can even be a tool for, the adopted parents to be able to say, hey, remember that story we read together? Are you feeling like that little girl? Are you feeling like that little boy right now? Because that's not the story. You're not leaving, you're not going somewhere. So I think watching for those warning signs, behavioral signs that maybe, and we can always tell with our kids,
mm-hmm.
when they get nervous about things, like we can tell their behaviors change. They either start talking a lot or they shut
Mm,
down. They don't talk at all. And then that's, where, like, what are you thinking about right now? Like, so it might be I'm taking a child to a dentist appointment. They're nervous about that, but they're thinking about their birth mom right now because they're nervous. Like there's triggers going on there. So, these are just opportunities for us to give a tool to a family to say, hey, let's use this story, as a way. And so some of our children who were really young, like they came to us from the hospital, they weren't even, aware that they were adopted. And so even this book in our own household has become a tool because we've been reading the book together and they didn't even know they were adopted. And then when they made a discovery that they were adopted, or we broke the news to them, it made it that much easier because all of a sudden they're aware. They understand from someone else's story what it means. And that triggered excitement because now they saw themselves in the story. And every good book, right?
right,
Every good
right,
writer writes in a way that the reader now sees themselves in that story. That's what we want these children. We want them to be able to see themselves in the story.
right. I love that because somebody who's never been, in foster care could never imagine the trauma that comes with being either, family to family to family or parents to grandparents to family. People always say, "Oh, kids are resilient, kids get," but truly there's a lot that goes on there.
Yeah, it really disrupts their ability to, it's even as adults, to establish healthy relationships with people. That's because they've never learned what that looks like or how to do that because they understand that all relationships are temporary.
Mm,
And I think this is not just a child of foster children. I think this is a societal problem that we have.
certainly, for real. I love at the end of the book that you allow them to accept Jesus because that would be the most important permanent relationship they could ever have.
Yes, understanding that adoption is God's idea of bringing us into His family, and so it doesn't stop with being adopted into a natural family, but this understanding of adoption was thought of long before, anyone ever thought of adopting this child. God had
Right.
already offered us to be a part of His family forever.
And
Uh,
forever. Praise
That's
God.
right. That's our forever family.
Yes. Where
And
can
family
this,
is more than blood, right? As we say
oh,
that, but
that
it's
true
true.
story. That is true story. I do have two stepchildren, so I can understand the difficulty of raising someone else's child, but not to
Yeah.
the, of course, to the, adoption and foster care and all of that. Where can listeners find your book?
Yeah, so if they want to go to chaplainted.org, there's a store button on there and it'll link them into Amazon to pick that up.
And there's also all kinds of information on there about your ministry, and if they have questions about foster, maybe being foster parents
Yeah,
or adoptive parents, that would be a great resource. Can you say that website one more time? And I'll make sure I
yeah,
have it on, but say it one more.
yeah. chaplainted.org.
Mm-hmm. Chaplainted.org. Yes. So that would be a great resource for anybody who's thinking about fostering, adopting, or who would like to get this book, because this book is great. So
Yeah,
thank you for
absolutely.
your time so much. What you do is so amazing and needed and valuable, and the hands of Jesus, I mean, definitely. So thank you so much. I appreciate you.
Well, it's our pleasure. And I just want to thank you for the opportunity just to share about this resource and this tool today for whoever.
Right.
It'll bless whoever.
God bless you. Thank you so much. Thanks for tuning in to Authors Amplified. If you enjoyed this episode, share it with a friend and subscribe for more incredible authors next time.